I was always so focused on being successful that I feel like a lot of times I haven't enjoyed the journey, you know?
You haven't been as present.
I haven't been as present. I haven't, and this is a big thing that my partner Jeff always talks about. You got to celebrate your wins, you know?
Welcome back to Case Studies. I'm here with my friend Jeff Danley, that I think I've been asking for 6 months now to come do a podcast, and
Finally made it happen.
Jeff, you guys have what I feel is one of the best stories on startup culture / entrepreneurship in Utah that no one knows. I think there's a handful of people that know, but you guys have invested in as many or more startups as anybody that I know personally. You're so broad and you've been doing it for so long, like almost before it was cool. And so I want to dive into that because it's a piece of it, but it's like when you think about Utah and you think about Silicon Slopes and you think about like all of the exciting things that are happening, so much of it has to do with that startup ecosystem.
Yeah.
And you guys have just been early, like you were in it early and you've been along for like really fun rides. So
yeah, it's been a good ride and we had a great time, and it's been a lot of fun just to be part of the growth that Utah's seen over the last 15 to 20 years.
Yeah. So talk to me about, obviously, you, Jamie, Jeff have kind of been thick as thieves for a long time, even since college.
Yeah.
And how did it come together? Because now, like, fast forward until the end, got a beautiful real estate business with Peak Ventures. I'm a proud investor in a couple of your different funds. You've built really incredible companies with, Peak Ventures, Peak Capital that's transitioned into Album Ventures, and then also just from a personal standpoint, you're still incredibly active on the personal front, just in that startup community. Like, but going back to the front, like, was that always the plan? Like, you're going to BYU, like, was the plan like, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur and I want to be an investor?
Yeah, honestly, that was always the plan. So Jeff and Jamie knew each other at BYU.
Okay.
They're like best friends at BYU. They ran the management consulting club together. I'm a couple years older than them, so I actually didn't know them at
So you didn't
BYU.
know them in college?
No.
Yep.
But then in business school, there was kind of a BYU MBA networking group that got formed.
Yep.
And so I met Jamie when we were both in business school.
And you guys went to...
Jamie went to Wharton, I went to Dartmouth.
But you're right there. You're kind of both East Coast,
yeah,
and got connected just at business school.
Yeah. So 2004, we met through this like networking group. And then,
and was your undergrad finance? Like when you went to undergrad, like, was that what you studied?
It was accounting.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm old enough. The finance program didn't exist.
That's crazy.
When I was at BYU.
So it wasn't even there.
Yeah, it wasn't there.
But the accounting program was always rock solid. I remember even back then, it was one of the top accounting programs in the country.
Yeah. It's always been like top 3.
Yeah.
And I don't know, accounting always came like pretty easy to me, and a language of business. And so I ended up doing accounting. I think today, if I went to BYU, I'd probably do finance, but yeah, that program didn't even exist back then.
So, and not to veer off track, what advice would you give to someone that's a college student that wants to do what you do? Like, what advice? I'm a freshman going into, college. What advice would you give kind of now that you've gone to the kind of formal education, but 2, you've lived in that world? Like, which track is the most relevant?
And you're saying someone that wants to do investing, whether it's real estate or
100%.
Private equity, venture capital. I think that finance degree is a pretty solid way to go.
Yeah.
I actually have just gone through this with my son. He's a junior at BYU. He's just going into the finance program. Okay. And he was debating, accounting versus finance.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think finance is the best kind of overall. Cause some of the other degrees, sort of limit you in some ways. You know, if you do accounting, I think the expectation is you're going to go into
you're going to go work at one of the big four. You're going to like transition into like a career in accounting, you know, or a career in, something, whether you're a, you know, controller or, you know, CFO or whatever it is, kind of go into that world.
Yeah. So, you know, and really at the end of the day, like you can come out of any of these degrees and be successful, and whether it's entrepreneurship, marketing, business management. But I think if you have your sights set on investing, whether it's real estate or companies, finance is probably the best degree. Yeah,
it's the language of business, like you described. I mean, that is like that's my wife's doing her MBA at BYU right now, and when she did her undergrad, she was in elementary ed.
Oh, was she? So
all of the quant stuff, she just missed it.
Yeah.
So she's going back and she's like redoing that at 39, and it's so painful.
Yeah.
Like
I can't imagine.
It's like speaking Spanish or speaking French, you know, it's truly, it's its own language. And, you know, so we're talking through things and going through balance sheets and income statements, and it's its own language.
It's really impressive that she's doing that.
No, I'm fired up for her. I'm so proud of her. Like,
that's so cool.
Yeah. But it's tears like every other night. Like it's like, you know, she'll get high and then she'll, you know, just get crushed in a class and just be like, man, you know, is this for me?
It's complicated stuff. You know, it's a lot of algebra. It's a lot of math, so funny. Calculus.
Like she was doing this Harvard like prep course, and she was stuck on something. And she's like, hey, come in here. Can you show? And I'm like, I don't know this stuff either. Like I dropped out of school. And so she's pulling me in, like kind of pulls me in, asking me a couple questions, and I get it wrong. And then she's pissed at me the rest of the night because I screwed up her. And I'm like, babe, like this is like, it's complex stuff. I do this stuff every day, but like, it's like, there's like some rules and some laws that like are counterintuitive. Like it doesn't like work the way your brain would think it would work. You know what I mean?
I have this problem with my seventh grader. She's asking me to help with math. I don't remember how to divide fractions, you know?
So funny. So like you go into the accounting program, straight to business school, or do you go like work?
Yeah. So I worked for 4 years at a venture capital firm.
And who'd you work with?
It was a firm called Conning Capital.
Okay.
It was on the East Coast. So you talk about your wife going back to school. So my wife, after BYU, did grad school at Yale.
I had no idea. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that took us to Connecticut.
How sick is that? That's amazing.
Yeah. In fact, in her program, I think she was the first woman from Utah ever, I think this is right, to graduate in her program.
And what did she graduate in?
It was forestry.
Okay.
It's a school of forestry.
That's so rad.
Yeah.
At Yale.
So
that's big time. That's like a big deal.
I tell people it's true. Like I had to go to an Ivy League grad school. Otherwise my kids would think I was the idiot of the family.
100%. You know? Like I'm sitting like, one, I didn't know forestry existed at Yale, you know, but two, like those schools are just different. Like I've gone back and done my executive education at Harvard, and you go back there and it's almost like, it's so old. There's so much tradition. You kind of feel like you're walking a little bit on like hollowed ground a little bit. You know what I mean? Like there's always like kind of a reverence to even just the campus. Like there's something about them that's really special.
Yeah. Yale's campus in particular, it kind of looks like Hogwarts or something. I mean, it's a beautiful campus.
No, it's so cool. So she took you back there. You worked in venture capital. Talk to me about that experience. Like what did you learn that was relevant, or what did you learn that kind of like got you going, you know, for the next stages of your career?
Yeah. So I did that for 4 years. So yeah, I always knew I wanted to invest in real estate and companies. Like I just always had that desire, even in high school.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I had a great experience there. We did fintech and healthcare tech.
Was it kind of like seed round? Was it kind of early stage? Was it Series A type rounds? I mean, what was your check size?
Yeah, it was more growth. So like Series A, Series B.
Okay. So bigger checks.
Pre-IPO, bigger checks.
Okay.
Yeah. And I joined at a really interesting time. I joined in end of 99 or in 99. So that was the .com crash. Was 2000. So I remember our first annual meeting, we wrote off like 2 or 3 companies.
Holy crap.
And everything was just collapsing at that time. So that was an interesting time to kind of get into the business. But, as far as learnings, I think the big thing, a couple of things I learned. One is how important deal sourcing was. And, just in the investment business, like it's all about being able to source the best deals. And that was something at that time, like I wasn't good at because I was just fresh out of college. But that was something where I really need to develop this skill set and ability.
Which is funny because it's a superpower of you guys now. Like, I don't know anybody, any relevant, it feels this way. And we see a lot of early stage deals. Feels like you guys got in first. Like there's just like, you guys have this ability of just kind of having your ear to the ground and just, and part of it's got to be reputation as well. Like people seek you guys out because they know that you're a great partner and, you're not like overly onerous. Like you're kind of betting on the team and the founder, and which again, I want to get into that on your philosophy, because when you think about real estate investing and you think about venture, there's almost like different sides of the brain. Like they're so different on how you go about them and how you treat those investments.
Yeah, they are very different, but they're also really complementary in a lot of ways. But yeah, I think going back to deal sourcing, part of it is a skill set that you can develop, but then part of it is just being around and doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
Because we made our first venture investment in Utah in 2007, I think, or 2008. So, just being there and having that reputation, I think is
kind of the same
powerful
cycle. You think about like you're doing deals in 99, 2000, doing your first deal in like 2007, 2008, like you're kind of cresting, like that's like when the world's imploding.
Well, that was like the second huge recession in my career. So it's been interesting that I've had these kind of inflection points around recessions.
Yeah.
And frankly, it's a great opportunity to be investing, whether it's real estate or venture, because a lot of opportunities come out of these kind of recessions. So, I think Warren Buffett said, like, you want to be investing when everyone's scared.
Yep.
And I found that to be true in my career as well.
Oh, it makes a ton of sense. And obviously, like, it worked out for you guys. It's easy in hindsight to look back and say, us doing multifamily and us doing venture in 2007, 8, 9, 10 was a pretty good time to be doing those things.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Amazing time.
But
it was a scary time.
But I think that's like a nod to you guys about like having a contrarian thesis.
Yeah.
And saying like, everybody else is scared, so I'm going to be bold. But that, like, you got to trust, you know what I mean? Like to be contrarian's tough.
The best real estate investments we ever made were in 2009, 2010. And I remember going into those, and really, really smart people who'd been around forever would look at them and just pass, they're like, oh, it's not a good time to be investing.
Yeah.
And, we've always had a bit of a contrarian
super cool
edge to us.
So you did that for 4 years. Then you go to business school.
Mm-hmm.
And talk to me about business school and kind of how that shaped both the way you saw the world, just kind of, looking back now, like, what would you say, hey, this is what I got from business school?
I think, a lot of BYU students or whatever will ask me about business school. Should I go to business school? For me, the number one thing I got was just the network, the people I met, and I look at Peak Capital today. Like, I met Jamie through business school, my partner. I met Chris Manning, our CEO, through business school. A lot of our big investor relations are all from business school. So I think just being around, and you experienced it at Harvard, just being around like really smart people who want to change the world, who are doing amazing things, like good things are going to come out of that.
Yeah. There's this proximity where it kind of becomes normal to think, hey, and I don't want to sound bad, but that we're special. We're doing something special, and you got this group that everybody's kind of striving and feels pretty lucky to be there, but also feels like, hey, we're going to go do something in the world. It's a pretty fun time too, because you're on the front end of that sprint. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of aspiration, a lot of like, I'm getting my foundation so that I can go.
Well, and it's incredible. Like, I'm about 20 years out of business school now, and I look around at my classmates, and I've got senior people at McKinsey, Bain, Goldman Sachs, Blackstone,
all over.
Yeah. The CFO of the UFC is a classmate of mine. So it's amazing to see like what everyone's accomplished.
Like there was some real talent in your class. Yeah. It's so fun. So you meet Jamie, finish up business school. How does Jeff come into the mix? Like, how do you guys like put the band together?
Yeah. So I had worked in multifamily. I had owned a bunch of like duplexes and fourplexes.
Yeah.
Going back, the first house I ever bought was a duplex.
Yep.
Lived in one side, ran out the other. Jamie had worked in multifamily. So we both graduated and then went and took jobs with multifamily developers.
Okay.
But pretty quickly it became obvious that we were going to have a recession, and probably a big real estate recession.
Yep.
So I called Jamie one day and I just said, I think there's going to be a crash in the market. We should start a firm to buy distressed multifamily. And he's like, yeah, that sounds great. I'm totally in. You got to meet my friend, Jeff Birmingham. And Jeff was in Utah. I was in California. Jamie was in North Carolina. So I flew out to Utah, met Jeff. We had lunch over at Thanksgiving Point. And if you know Jeff, he's like, within 10 minutes, he's like, let's do this,
He's fired up.
Yeah. And so we had our meeting, had a great meeting. We both left and both immediately called Jamie and just said, we're in, And so that was the start of Peak. That was,
you guys just knew.
Yeah, we just knew.
Yeah.
I knew when I met Jamie in 2004. I just knew like, this is somebody
He's a guy I want to do business with. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was June of 2006. And then December of 2006 is when we incorporated. And took us a year or two to get going because the market didn't really crash until 2008.
Yeah.
So 2007, there weren't a lot of opportunities. But yeah, I moved back here. We convinced Jamie to move here. He kind of lost the bet 2-1.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was great. And Jeff had been here all along. He started a company when he graduated from BYU, grew it and sold it. And so he was really connected in like the Utah scene, kind of tech scene. Yep. And he had been here, through BYU. So,
and was that like, how did you guys divide and conquer? Was it always like, we're all going to do everything? Or was it more like, hey, Jeff, you go on like the venture side, we're going to go on the real estate side, and then we kind of come together and collaborate? Like, how do you guys divide up the roles?
Yeah, I would say for the first, 5 years, we were all running Peak Capital. And I would say Jamie and I were more like deal sourcing and managing the properties we bought. And Jeff was more on the fundraising side.
Yep.
Raising equity for our acquisitions. And then probably about 5 years in, we recruited Sid to come over.
Yep.
And Jeff and Sid started what became Peak Ventures. Okay. And so then at that point, Jeff was really focused on the venture side. Yep. And Jamie and I were kind of co-CEOs, I would say, of Peak Capital. Yep. And then about 5 years ago, we brought Chris on as a CEO.
Okay. What's the best deal you've ever done?
On the real estate side or venture side?
Both. One of each. Kind of what best venture deal, how did it come together? And like, did you know? You know what I mean? Like go through like the best deal you've ever done.
We've done a lot of good venture deals, but I would say the one that's probably like most near and dear to all of us is Podium.
Yeah.
Because we had just raised our first fund. It was like a $25 million fund, a little less than that. And Podium was literally the first investment we made in that fund. And I remember when how
crazy is that your best deal you ever did was the first deal you did in your first fund? Like that's crazy. Just like never happens.
Yeah. And I remember Eric and Dennis came in and, we just knew these guys were going to be successful. And I think they were pre-product even at that point. It was just an idea. And, but they had a great idea. And, in early stage venture, you're really betting on a team and a market. And we loved the team and we knew this was a huge market. And there was a real need, for their product.
Yeah.
And so, we invested and ended up being one of the best deals we ever did.
Tell me about the best real estate deal you've ever done.
Probably the best one we've ever done is one in Atlanta that we bought. It's probably 2016. It was owned by a big institution. They weren't paying attention. This in a lot of markets, you have, and this is kind of getting into the details, but you have for water, you have like a residential rate and a commercial rate. And these guys were getting charged the residential rate on like 250 units. And the residential rate's like 10 or 15 times the commercial rate. And the owner just had no idea. This big institution owned thousands of properties. And so we looked at that and we're like, we can cut the water by massive amounts.
Day one.
Like hundreds of thousands of dollars day one. And so, and there were a lot of other issues too, but the water was the most obvious
the entire
one.
Deal. Yeah.
Yeah. So we ended up buying that, fixing it and selling it, I think 18 months later for an 8x net multiple.
Holy smokes. In 2016.
Which I don't even know what the IRR is.
No
on that,
one
but
does
it's
that. Like
massive.
No one does that in real estate. In multifamily, like no one does that. Like a 3x is a great
3x is a great outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, those don't come around very often, as you know, but
talk to me about the progression of growing a firm. Like what was the hardest part?
I think, that's a great question. I think the hardest part is like the beginning, like getting to profitability. We never raised any capital.
Yeah.
We just self-funded it. And I think, there were some dark days, especially in like 2008 when the whole world was falling apart. I don't know if you remember that, but like we had our TV in our office and we're watching the stock market go down every day, 5-10%. And there were some dark days where we literally didn't know if we'd survive.
Yeah.
I actually moved. I mean, this is a funny story. I moved in with my in-laws just to save money because
how cool is that?
Like
honestly, that's the good stuff.
Yeah, it was
like in 2007, we had started, I came down to UVU to play baseball and my wife was playing volleyball and we ended up getting engaged and went out work for a company and had, I don't know anybody that was working in like 2004, 5, and 6.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't doing pretty well. Like the economy was just ripping. Felt like interest rates were pretty low. And we were the same. We did extremely well. And I was buying everything I could buy. I was buying real estate. I was buying rental properties. And at that point, like if you bought something, it was just worth more a year later. And so this is kind of a naive 22, 23-year-old. So we're building $1 million house in 2006. And literally,
which back then, that's a big house.
It was a big house, and we thought it was going to be worth $1.3 million at the end. Like it was just, we bought the lot good, the construction, and the crash hit right in the middle of it, and all of a sudden we're underwater $200,000 or $300,000, and I still like losing my job, losing everything. We're in this house. I just feel embarrassed, and I still remember like me and my wife like have a for sale sign on the house, and just drive to Austin, Texas to go knock doors over the summer and never saw the house again. It sold while we were gone.
Is that right?
But it was like, when you're talking about like moving in with your parents, it was humble times. I still remember calling a bank. It was like some small bank in Oklahoma and just being like, I lost my job. I'm a commissioned door-to-door sales rep and I'm driving to Oklahoma and, let me know how I can help. But like, I got to go like try to take care of my family. It was really humble times.
Yeah. This is a cool, like full circle moment. But so I bought a home similar to you, kind of bought a home with the idea of flipping it. It ended up going down in value because I bought it in 2007. And then I got to a point where I just didn't know if I had enough capital to like survive.
Yeah.
And so I rented my house to a guy named Mark Hancock, who is now the CFO of PAX that just went public.
What? How cool
Isn't
is
that crazy?
That's great. And that PAX company's like one of the best.
Crushing it.
Oh my gosh, they're killing it. Like they're absolutely killing it.
So when they got in the news, I was like, oh, that's my buddy Mark that I rented my house to back in 2008.
No,
moved in with my in-laws.
That's so cool. No, so it was humble beginnings. So starting the company, bootstrapping it, probably the hardest time, just from like a fear, like trying to navigate, like, hey, can we do this? Is it going to survive?
Yeah, I think starting a company and bootstrapping is always hard. I mean, it's the most rewarding thing you probably can do, but it's also really hard.
It's hard.
But then to do that in like the biggest recession of any of our lives, like that was a tough time. In an
industry where you got to go raise money.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's times and seasons when raising money is really easy. There's other times where it's hard. And 2000.
It was hard in 2008.
It was hard. They just like people didn't have money. Like you think about anybody, I still remember like I had so many friends that were real estate agents, insurance agents, mortgage brokers that were killing it. That all of a sudden it would like the faucet turned off.
Yeah.
Stuff just was not happening. Homes weren't selling. Like people like, and these like high paid, self-employed entrepreneurial, roles just kind of disappeared for a while.
Yeah.
I was on the phone with Eric Woodley this morning.
Yeah.
And I remember Eric, he was killing it. And then all of a sudden, like he went back to school. He went back and did his MRAT at University of Utah because just nothing was happening. Like stuff, people weren't buying homes. They weren't selling homes. It was rough.
Yeah, I remember there was one night in particular, we were sitting around, it's probably 10 o'clock at night at the office and we're like, should we just shut this company down and go get jobs? Because it was kind of that.
It was that scary.
It was that scary.
Yeah.
And fortunately, we were like, no, let's give it another 6 months.
Yeah.
And see if we can turn this around. And then shortly after that, we kind of got a deal done that brought in some cash and allowed us to continue to operate.
That's so cool. That's so cool. What's the worst deal you've ever done on the real estate side? What's the one that you just missed, that you were certain that this was going to be great and it just wasn't?
Yeah.
And what mistakes did you make?
Yeah, we've had, fortunately, we've never lost money on a deal. But we've definitely had, I'm trying to think of the worst. We've had a few bad ones for sure. I would say the hardest ones are like, I'm thinking of one in particular that's in Dallas. And we just didn't realize how much crime and problems there was in the tenant base, not property. And so, because the prior owner just didn't have any like leasing standards or credit standards or anything. And so, we got in there and realized like there's so much crime in this property, so much drug activity, all this. And so to go through and like turn that property around it can take years. I mean, it'd take 2-3 years because you gotta turn all the units, bring in better tenants.
Yeah.
Obviously good tenants don't want to come into a property that's having crime problems like that. And so, that I would say as far as, because it's pretty easy to underwrite like location and markets and all that, but to really get a sense of kind of the tenants that are there, that can sometimes be tricky.
Yeah. And we've
made some mistakes.
Yeah, like everything on paper looked good. You missed that there was just mischief inside the doors.
Yeah.
And that ended up being the problem in the asset base. Couldn't bring in good tenants because no one wanted to live there. Existing tenants caused problems, did damage.
Yeah.
And so what do you do in that? You just kind of cut your losses and sell it and, or break even and just try to like move on and go fight another fight?
Yeah, in that case, that's what we ended up doing. And we spent 2-3 years kind of working through and improving the tenant base, trying to manage it up to a better situation. And then we sold it and basically got our money back.
Yeah. Which sometimes that's a win.
So that can sometimes be a win.
Like honestly, if you can go fight, on the ones that didn't work, I remember I did an early stage deal with a good buddy, good team, good thesis. It was a bigger check for me in an early, it was $500,000 in an early stage deal, which, I don't do anymore. I size them down.
Yeah.
But at that point, had conviction, wrote a bigger check, and it just didn't go well from the get-go, and kind of didn't for like 5 years, to the point where I'd written it off. I'd written it to zero. And then it was kind of Christmas time, and I get a call from the founder, and he's like, hey, I know this hasn't gone the way that, you want it to go. There's a group that just came in. They want to clean out the whole cap table. I'm going to return your principal. I'm sorry. And I'm like, dude, that's like that's a phenomenal outcome. Like, thanks for staying in the fight. But like sometimes, like on the ones that don't work, for me, just getting back to, even is like a big win.
Yeah. Yeah. Our goal is to never lose money, but but I'm always okay to just get my capital back on a hard deal that doesn't go as you wanted.
So how do you like blend that with venture, where a lot of deals go to zero? Like there's a lot of companies that kind of by definition, they don't work out. You know what I mean? Like that world that you're living in, that's seed and pre-seed, and just, you're going to have, 50, 70% of them that do go to zero. They just don't work out. So like, how do you balance those two? Is it portfolio? Is it just, you got to be broad?
Yeah. You got to have a portfolio.
Yeah.
And it is, you have to have two different mindsets. I mean, I love real estate because it's relatively easy to underwrite. It's relatively stable. The return, you're not going to have a good outcome, as you said earlier, is like a 2 to 3 times your money.
100%.
But it's stable. You get dividends along the way.
Yeah.
Venture, it's a totally different mindset. And I think really you have to have more of a portfolio mentality, where, you've got a fund of 20 companies, and, you may have 4 or 5 that, or even 10 that don't do well.
Yeah.
But then hopefully you have a handful of the podium or the divvies or the
drive the whole return.
To drive most of the return.
Yep.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to a founder? Like you've been in like over 100 deals for sure, but you've been in so many early stage deals. What advice who succeeds and who fails? Like based on your experience, when you're looking at somebody, like what do you say? Hey, these characteristics are what I look for when I'm looking for a company to go deploy capital.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a couple things. One is we always advise founders to have a partner, like 1 to 2 partners. It's really hard to start a company on your own. Some people can do it, but I would say if you look at most of the successful companies in Utah, it's a team of 2 or 3 people that founded it.
Yep.
So that's usually our first advice. And then, a mistake I see a lot of founders make is they're going after small markets. So my advice is like, always go after a big market, because if you capture a small amount of a big market, you're still going to have a big company.
Yeah.
Versus capturing a big amount of a small market, it may be a small outcome. So that's probably the second thing. And then third, I would say, is like really try to differentiate yourself. There's I feel like Utah has a lot of me too.
A lot of same.
And we don't love that. We want to see people that are like, have a new fresh idea or going after something big that other people aren't focused on.
Yeah.
And then probably the last thing I'd say is like, really try to solve a problem in the market. Like if you're solving a real problem, you're going to be successful, whereas a lot of companies we see, they're not really solving a problem that, they might be solving a problem a few people have, but they're not solving like a big market problem.
So let's take your criteria and go back to podium and layer that onto podium, kind of those 4 things. Like you've obviously got really good partnership.
Yeah.
There was a big market. There was a real tangible, like when they came in and said, hey, this is the problem and this is how we're going to solve it. What was that problem that like instantly for you guys said, man, if you can solve that, you're going to have a good company?
Yeah. And this is what we loved about Podium is Eric. So Eric's dad owned like a tire shop or auto repair shop in Canada. And he had a great shop, great customer service, but he would get, and we've always experienced this, he'd get like 1 or 2 negative reviews, 1-star reviews. And he's like, there's got to be a way to like manage this so that, my online profile represents how happy
Everybody
99% of my customers are. And we in multifamily had that same issue. We would have, it's really only the people that are really upset that'll complain. And so we would have a great property and we'd have these 1-star reviews. And so we were always like, how do we manage those and improve that? So we got the value prop immediately. And there was nobody at that time. Since then, there have been a lot of kind of Me Too's like we talked about, but at that time we had never met anybody that was trying to solve this problem. So that really resonated with us.
No, fascinating. Talk to me about family. Like, how does family fit in the mix? Obviously, you followed your wife out to Yale. She followed you to, you guys went to go do your business school. Back to Utah. Like, talk to me about like how do you manage that balance of be a great dad, be a great husband, stay married, but also like be excellent in my career?
Yeah, that's one of the hardest things, but I would say, who you choose as your life partner is probably the most important decision you'll ever make, and if you can't mess that up, and obviously it's when you're, 23, 25, it's hard to know, like, cause you're so young.
Of course.
But I think that's sort of like first principles is be really, really careful.
Yeah.
Be really thoughtful about who you're choosing as your life partner.
And you just knew.
Yeah. Yeah. I just knew. And in hindsight, that's been clearly like the best decision I've ever made in my life.
Yeah.
And I just got so lucky there. But and then I think the hard thing, the trick that life plays on you, especially as a founder, is when you're starting your company, typically when your kids are young.
Yeah.
And your company takes like
everything
80, 100 hours, 120 hours of your week. And so it's hard to like find that balance between your family and building your business. And I definitely, looking back, I could have been better at that for sure.
Do you think you could have still had the same success and done it different?
It's so hard to know in hindsight because, anyone that started a business knows like you've got to, it just requires
everything,
so much time and attention.
Yeah.
And, I think certainly I could have found a better balance in those early years. And I think I did an okay job, but that's just the tough thing I think in life for everybody is trying to balance, work when you're trying to build your career and build your net worth and raising your kids.
Yeah.
And, I've tried to be, as I have more time, in the last few years, I've tried to really be more intentional with that, with like spending time, like with my daughter. I've driven my daughter to school every day for the last 3-4 years.
Talk to me about like habits and rituals that you've put in place to like be better at that. Like what, obviously early on in the career, you're surviving. It's kind of a desperation hustle. At this point in your career, it's not that. You're working for different reasons. You're working to contribute and to obviously like the game of business is so fun. And it's like, it's always good to have a mountain to climb, but talk to me about like the habits and rituals that you've implemented or learned and that have been able to give you the quality of life, that you seek. Like, what do? You talk about driving your daughter to school. What are the other like 3 or 4 power habits that you say, man, I do this on a weekly basis and this is the difference?
Yeah. I think for me, it's like, trying to align my schedule with theirs as much as I can. So getting up, with them, spending the morning with them as much as I can, driving, taking them to school, and then trying to be home when they get home.
Yeah.
And try to spend as much of the rest of that day as I can with them, finding activities that we enjoy doing together, so that my hobbies become their hobbies and vice versa.
Yep.
And then I think a big one too, it's common sense, but just like, on a personal level is like making sure you're working out every day, eating well, so you're staying healthy.
And these are just on like, because we're talking about family, but these are, is it just so that you can show up right?
Yeah.
You know, that you show up with the right energy, the right mental health, like the right, I mean, for me, working out is like, it's so essential in me being the best version of myself. You know, it releases endorphins. I feel confident. You know, I did something hard, all those things, you know, outside of the physical that are really important.
Yeah. If you're not working out, if you're not eating well, you're not going to be in the best mental state, you know?
Yeah.
And so as a dad or as a husband, you're not going to be able to show up and be as present and as effective as you otherwise could be.
Yeah.
So those have been, and again, like I definitely like sacrificed that early.
Yeah.
But I've been really trying to focus on that more the last 5-10 years.
Talk to me about legacy. Something that I've always admired about you is how deliberate you and your wife are on contribution and giving back and getting involved. And you give a lot of money, but you also give a lot of time, and you like bring communities together around causes. Like, one, what gets you fired up? Two, what's the why? You know, you guys are still so young. So when you look forward to the next 10, 20, 30 years, like, what do you want to be remembered for?
Yeah, it's funny. You kind of figure out like what you value over time, and what you valued at 20 is always different than I just turned 50 than what you value at 50. But for me, it's really, I think the common theme is investing in people.
Yeah.
And helping people raise themselves to the next level. And so whether it's investing in companies, you know, like going back to Podium, I love driving by their office and seeing that, you know, they employ thousands of people.
So proud. Yeah.
You know, that I had like some tiny part in like helping to build that or helping to facilitate that. And then, you know, at Peak, we have a big internship program that we've been running since day one. We had back in 2008, we hired our first intern, and, you know, we've had hundreds of people come through that program, maybe even thousands. And nothing makes me happier than when I see one of our interns that now works at Blackstone in their real estate group, or works at Aries, you know, or or Ceres Regis. And it's like, or goes out and starts their own company.
How cool is that? I haven't even thought about that, but we're early. Like, we've only been, you know, our company's only been around for 4 years, but we do the same thing. And I feel the same pride. Like, we'll have kids that go off and work at Lazard or work at Silver Lake, or, you know, these firms, and you're always cheering for them, and you're kind of proud. You're kind of saying like, hey, like, you know, like they started with us, you know what I mean? Cause those firms are exceptional. Like they really are like really incredible firms. And so, no, that's interesting. I haven't thought about that from an internship program.
And these students just need an opportunity. You know? They just need that opportunity on their resume.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're super smart. They just need that opportunity. So yes, we've had that program since day one. And then my wife and I run a big scholarship program up in Wasatch County. And the idea there is like any high school student in Wasatch County that wants to go to college, like the money is available for them to go, you know, a combination of, you know, scholarships from the school, but we have a big scholarship program. And the idea there too is just like, there's so many of these students that we've met over the years who are like 3.9, 4.0 GPA, but they never thought that going to college was feasible for them. You know, their mom is working as a housekeeper, and their dad is working in construction, and no one in their family's ever gone to college. Yeah. And so they just need the dream or the idea that that's like feasible for them. And then they need a little bit of money. You know, they don't need a lot of money. It's made, you know, a few $1,000s a year can get them from a point where it's just not even feasible to where they're graduating from BYU or UVU or the U of U, and then going on to graduate school. We've had a bunch of students that we've supported who have gone on to law school or MBA school or other. It's got to make
you guys programs. So proud, like, because you guys have been doing it for a while. It wasn't like, hey, like, you know, we have all our money and then let's start doing it. Like, you guys were doing it when you didn't have as much money. And I think that's the thing that, like, I've always admired about you. It's kind of been part of, like, your philosophy from the get-go. You know, you've always tried to give as you've gone, you know, and I think that, you know, big Tony Robbins fan, he talks about this concept that, you know, if you wouldn't give
$1
out of 10, you're not going to give 100 million out of a billion. Like, that philosophy needs to be embedded early, you know, to get those habits. Like, where'd it come from? Was it your wife? Was it you? Was it like shared values that you just always said, we want to take a portion of, you know, what we earn and invest it back in the community?
Yeah, it's definitely shared values. I think for both of us, it came from our parents, where we saw our parents giving back to the community. And then I think we both felt like we've been given so much, you know, for whether it's from BYU or just the experiences that we've had that have helped us to get where we are. And so, you know, being able to give back in some measure, you know, it's something that, like you said, we've been doing for a long time. And I love it because you talk about legacy. I mean, if, you know, some of these students can go and get a degree at BYU and then go on and get a graduate degree, and then they're into an amazing career. And then just think about, like, generations.
Not like that. That's the stuff that fires me up. Like, honestly, like, when you think about it, like, it truly, like, lights you up. It fills you up completely, is the idea that, like, the ripple effect of these intentions, these good intentions, but not just intentions, like putting your money where your mouth is and getting behind these causes, and the fun that it is to, like, be able to, like, see it happen. You know what I mean? I think that we talk about, you know, admiration. I admire how deliberate you guys are with your giving. Like, it's not casual, and you don't do it to everything. Like, you find stuff that you can focus on and get a little deeper, that you can, you know, make a deeper impact, which I love. What else are you guys doing outside of the scholarships? Like, what else is, like, a part of the foundation that just, like, gets you excited?
Yeah, I sit on the board of IHC for the Wasatch Back, so Park City and Heber. And I love that because I think healthcare, I mean, there's nothing more important than your health.
Yeah.
And I think healthcare is so critical. You know, another one I know I've talked to you about that I'm on the board is Charity Vision.
Yeah.
And as an investor, like, I look at a lot of things as kind of return on investment.
Yeah.
And I think with education, that's so obvious that the return on that investment. And Charity Vision is another example where it's like, for $25, you can literally heal blindness, you know,
that's crazy.
Solve blindness in these third world countries through these cataract surgeries. It kind of blows
your mind that it's even a thing. You're like, how is this not just, like, eradicated? You know, how is this not just gone?
It's in the US, it is obviously, but when you go to some of these third world countries, they just don't have the resources. And so to be able to go in and for a nominal amount of money, literally cure blindness is so incredible.
Yeah.
So that's something that I've really been, enjoyed being involved in. And then a thing that we've done that has really been fun is we've given our kids money to donate to charity of their choices each year. And it's super fascinating to see what they pick.
Interesting.
So
like, give me some examples. Like, what is the pool of cash and how do you go about, like, that process? Is it like a family council? Is it like sitting at the dinner table? Like, how does that go down?
Yeah. So we give them, we have them choose 2 charities each year to support. And, so I'll just give you an example. My daughter, and we don't really, like, we'll help them. We'll give them any resources. We'll introduce them to nonprofits, but we kind of let them find what's interesting to them. So I'll give you an example. My daughter, this year chose the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and, Protect Our Winters, because she loves to ski.
Yeah.
So she's like, I want to make sure that it continues to snow in Utah. And then Make-A-Wish, I think she found Make-A-Wish through school.
Yeah.
But just obviously the mission of that organization resonates with everybody. You know, being able to give like a wish to a child that has cancer or some other life-threatening disease is just incredible. So those were the two she picked this year. So we try to go and like not just give the money, but actually participate in some activity with the nonprofit. And then each year they can do the same nonprofit or they can choose a new one. And we've only been doing this for a few years, so it'll be interesting to see.
And how's it been?
It's been amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the dollar amount? Like, what are you putting in the kitty and saying, hey, this is what we're divvying up?
So we do $5,000 per child.
Per child. Yeah.
And so they can do $2,500 to two nonprofits or $5,000 to one.
I'm like instant Baugh family habit being adopted right now. This, I could not love this idea more. Like, it's like the idea of being able to go participate with your kids in that process, but also like let them choose and let them taste the fruits of the impact that you go make with your dollars. You know what I mean? I think sometimes there's a disconnect between like the dollars are needed to go like move something forward, whether it's a scholarship or whether it's, you know, fixing cataracts or whether it's Make-A-Wish, you know, like those experiences are the fruits of somebody going and being successful in business or making a profit and then deciding to invest it into, you know, the community versus reinvesting it into consumption or into their own business. You know what I mean? And so I think like that process, I love everything about all of it. I love the family dynamic and I love like them being able to play in the game. You know what I mean? I sat down with Brian Murphy and did one of these conversations, and he does a similar thing with investing where he'll actually put like a family fund together and his kids have access to the family bank and they get to go take a loan with an interest rate and put it to work in different investments. And they have to go kind of articulate a thesis and they've got to put a plan together, but they get to go play in the game with some capital. And, you know, he's obviously done well. And, you know, and I remember hearing that being like, I'm doing that 100%, like, because it's this forcing function to, you know, have those conversations with your kids and actually like have them go risk capital at a young age, which most time you just can't do that. You know, you don't have it. So you don't get those reps or you don't get those experiences. And I think it's a similar concept with giving.
Yeah, we've done that with investing as well. My kids are incredibly hard workers, so they've always had jobs and they've always earned like, you know, pretty good money. So they'll have $5,000 in the bank or whatever. And, you know, I see so many deals. So once in a while I'll go to them and say, hey, I think this is a really good deal. You should invest $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever. And they've done that. And now they've seen some reps where they got like 3 times their money back or whatever. And it's great. I think it kind of builds that mindset early on because they could go spend that money on consume it, buy new shoes or whatever. Instead, they're saving that, they're investing that, they're seeing the results of that. So that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's really cool. Talk to me about faith. Talk to me about how faith fits in everything.
Yeah, I think faith's critical. So I grew up in Heber City in Utah. And, you know, back then when I was growing up, it was really small town. And I think I had one friend that wasn't Mormon growing up.
Everybody.
Yeah. And so, you know, faith was just part of the community, just part of my life growing up. And so that's always been an important thing for me. I think, you know, especially as an entrepreneur, starting a business is like the ultimate act of faith. And so I think having that as part of your life and part of your habits is really important as an entrepreneur. And then, you know, once you've had some success, I think we've all seen like, it can be easy to get derailed once you've had success. And you know, we've all kind of seen examples of people that's happened to. And so I think having something in your life, you know, whatever it is that you call faith, that grounds you and sort of keeps you grounded and humbled and, aware of what's really important, I think is critical.
How is your faith the same today as when you were 15 years old, and how is it different? Like, how has it evolved?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I was 15, I think I was really relying on like my parents' faith.
Yeah.
And really kind of the LDS faith was all I knew, I mean, it was all I knew growing up. And then obviously living in Connecticut, my wife going to Yale, going to Dartmouth, like I got exposed to like a whole new world of ideas. And so I would say today my faith is a lot more just nuanced in the sense that like I've just had so many more experiences now.
But what does that mean? What does nuanced mean?
I think nuance just means like open, open and sort of understanding of inclusive.
Yeah.
Of like a lot of, because I think growing up in Utah in the 90s, like it was very like black and white. And now I think that for me, it's like a much bigger tent of like, of inclusion, of just like, there's a lot of different ways to live a good moral life,
Yeah.
And obviously there's a right way and a wrong way to do things still, but there's a lot of different faiths out there and a lot of different philosophies. And I think there's a lot of good and, a lot of different things. And a lot of the conflict we see in the world today is just because people aren't willing to be sort of understanding and inclusive of different opinions and philosophies. And so I've tried to be more kind of understanding and inclusive of other people's beliefs and all that.
But it's important to you. Like it's been like a guiding factor through the journey.
It has been. Yeah. I'd say it's been like a grounding factor for me. Cause I think it's, Alex Bean like just came out with a book that I thought was great. I just finished reading it, but I think we've had like some success. It can be hard to like stay grounded and stay humble and kind of stay true to who you are. Yeah. And so I think faith has kind of played that role for me, especially like the last 5 to 8 years.
So great. So if you go back, talk to yourself, and obviously you're doing that with your kids now, what like relevant advice would you give them when they're looking forward? Kind of the do's and don'ts. Like if you could go back and you could say, this is what I've learned. This is what I screwed up. And this is what I did right. And this is the difference that it's made. I know one of them was be very careful who you marry, but what else?
Yeah, that's definitely a big one for me. I've screwed up a lot over, obviously over the years, but I think a couple things, like I was always so, what's the word? I was always so focused on being successful that I feel like a lot of times I haven't enjoyed the journey, You
haven't been as present.
I haven't been as present. I haven't, and this is a big thing that my partner Jeff always talks about. You got to celebrate your wins. Like I don't think we've been always good at celebrating our wins.
Interesting.
We sort of have a win and then we just move right on, and we don't take the time to like really celebrate that. And then for sure, like I think the only thing in life that really matters is relationships. And I think I early on, especially, was sort of prioritized like learning, like studying, learning, succeeding over relationships. And just in the sense that like I'd go to the library and study instead of like hanging out with my friends.
Which is so crazy to me because I'm sitting here listening to this, and I would say like out of the friends that I know, it feels like you're very present a lot. Like you prioritize time with kids and with family and with friends and charity, and like you're able to build that into your schedule. So obviously it's a skill you've developed.
Something I've had to develop. Yeah. But that's something like going back to my undergraduate and even my graduate school to some degree, I'm like, I wish I would have like
spent more time on the relationship.
Yeah. And I still have amazing relationships, from those times. And had a great experience, but I would have prioritized the relationships more.
Yeah. So great. Well, brother, I've loved chatting with you. I admire you guys. Like you guys, I think about our career, and you guys were some of our first, champions and cheerleaders, and you got behind us and, supported us early. And you don't, anybody who's getting started, you remember the people who were early, because you needed that like push and that support. And I just, I always think back about, you, Jamie and Jeff, and, there's, outside of just, admiring like the professionalism and the product that you bring to the table, and I'm a proud investor and, refer anybody that is looking to go have exposure to multifamily your way, just because I think you guys are exceptional. But outside of that, like, the way that you give back to the community makes it really easy to support you and cheer for you. Like, it makes it really, you came and sat down with me and my partner Dave on your new fund. And there's been times in my life where I haven't had access to deals and asset classes and opportunities. And today it's the opposite. I have 10 friends that I could do multifamily and, all the different asset classes. And it's just, you love saying yes to the people that you admire, that are good people. And then I think that's, if I could give any feedback from afar or from the outside, is that I'm just always cheering for you guys. I think, I love the way you show up in business. I love the way that you support startups from like a abundant cheerleader in your corner mentality. And I love just kind of the consistency of process that you've done with that real estate business. It's easy to do something in a flash in the short term. It's really tough to do something excellent over the decades. And you guys are at this point right now where you guys have been excellent for a lot of decades. And so anyway, just thank you for coming on.
Appreciate that, Casey.
Cheering for your wins, and, appreciate you coming and sharing your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.